Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to follow up one line of questioning that Senator Hume was pursuing there, and then I want to move to a slightly different aspect of this. Ms Hinder, you just said that HWLE is compliant with the Essential 8 security practices. To what maturity level?
Maturity level 2, Senator.
Level 2?
Yes.
Right. So there are 4 levels of maturity to the Essential 8. 2 is, middling performance. It's not exceptional performance. Is that satisfactory in your view to hold potentially parliamentary privileged material?
Well, maturity level 2 is consistent with the maturity level mandated for Commonwealth government agencies, Senator.
Yes, and the ANAO has been very candid about their concerns about their insufficient progress in Commonwealth agencies. That does not reassure me at all.
And and I'm taking this from the HWLE's statement on most mitigation strategies. It complies with maturity level 3, Senator. So as the PSPF works, and I know that you know this, Senator, because of your previous roles, you can be at a maturity level 3 on a number of things but still come out with an overall rating of maturity level 2. That's what HWLE is.
Okay. President, thank you for your opening statement and for providing this correspondence from yourself and the Speaker to the Secretary. Why did you and the Speaker feel it was necessary to take this action?
I said in answer to the committee's questions last week that we had raised very similar concerns to DPS as the committee had. I indicated to the committee that I had a couple of conversations with Clark around privilege issues, and bearing in mind the concerns of MPs and senators or parliamentarians expressed by this committee, the Speaker and I have acted. It is, I think, appropriate to have the data here that would give myself and the Speaker confidence. I'm not suggesting we don't have confidence now, but I absolutely believe that the data is best held here. But that isn't to suggest I don't have confidence in the Secretary or the Deputy in the way that they have proceeded.
That's what I want to test, and I don't want to personalise this about your level of confidence in individuals, but just how this issue was handled in the process. If you have confidence in how it was handled, why is it necessary to bring this data back in-house?
Because, like you, Senator Patterson, I'm uncomfortable about it.
Right, so something must be wrong if you're not comfortable with it.
No, Senator Patterson, nothing is wrong. But I think to satisfy all of us who are parliamentarians and a potential issue of privilege, the data is best held here to give you confidence if the NAC or there was any requirement for the data to be examined any further, bearing in mind it has not been examined, that you would have confidence that the MOU that the Parliament has in place with the AFP, the MOU, and IPIA, which is not really relevant in this matter, would come into play and the clerks would be involved. I think that would certainly give me and the Speaker confidence. That's why we've moved in this way. That isn't to suggest we don't have confidence right now.
Well, I agree with this, with what you just said, and I welcome the fact that you've done this. I think it is the right thing to do, but that is because I'm not confident, and I suspect a lot of colleagues are not confident with this data being stored externally, and I'm finding it very difficult to reconcile your two propositions that there's nothing to see here, nothing to worry about, no reason to be concerned, but we're just going to bring it back in-house. Like, they're contradictory positions, aren't they?
Well, they are not contradictory positions, Senator Patterson. I want to, if there has been a loss of confidence, bearing in mind there are matters here that DPS can't discuss that go to other investigations, which the Secretary has been clear with the committee from day one. This goes back to last year and lines of questioning that Senator Hume was pursuing quite correctly. And if there is an issue around confidence of other parliamentarians, bringing it back to the Senate, where the clerks will hold that material, I think gives it a different level of confidence. So that's my concern. That's why the Speaker and I have acted, and I hope it goes some way to restore any concerns that you might have.
There's one other practical difference, though, and you alluded to it in your previous answer, though, which is that the Parliament does have MOUs about access to this material with the AFP and the NAC and other bodies. As the clerk said in his evidence last week, HWLE has no MOUs with those bodies or with the Parliament. So an additional layer of protection now exists when this data is brought back in-house, isn't there?
I think there are other questions, and I'll have to take this on notice because obviously there is another investigation on foot. So I'll have to take on notice what you're asking me, Senator Patterson, but I reiterate I do have confidence in the way that Ms Hinchcliffe and Ms Hinder have proceeded, but this is an extra layer that the Speaker and I feel is necessary.
But just as a matter of logic, right now, with the data being stored at TransPerfect, courtesy of HWLE, the NAT Commissioner or the AFP can go to them without reference to the clerks and get access to that material.
No, that's not true. Hypothetically, if the NAC wanted access to DPS, because it's not HLE data, it's DPS data, then the MOU would come into play.
Okay, so there is no additional protection for bringing it in-house then?
Well,
you can't have it both ways.
Senator Patterson, I'm not quite sure what you're asking me. I thought the physicality of the data was of concern to senators. It's of a concern to me.
It is.
So bringing it back here takes that concern away.
Indeed.
Of course, if the NAC looked at any data that involved parliamentary privilege, the MOU that is in place with the NAC, which has been refreshed, would come into play.
Well, I think
now there's always a risk that perhaps the clerks say that there's not privilege in that matter.
Sure.
All of those sorts. I can't preempt any of that, and I'm speaking hypothetically. But that risk of where the data is removed. It's not about. I'm confident that the NAC entered into the MOU discussions, which I chaired along with the Speaker, with good faith, and I think we've got. It's not the best model, and I think some people might still think we could have done better, but it is the best we were able to negotiate in good faith with the AFP, who also negotiated in good faith. It's a big improvement of what was there beforehand, and I think it gives us comfort.
Remind me when you first became aware of this and were first raised concerns about this with the Secretary?
I'll have to take that on notice, Senator Patterson.
What was it, weeks ago? Was it months ago? Just so that I can proceed with these questions, help me out.
I believe it was around the 20th of August.
Okay, thank you.
27th of August.
The which?
27th.
27th. So if you were concerned on the 27th of August about this, it was in the media last week with Mr. Probin's reporting, and we asked questions about it then. Why have you waited till today to take this action?
Senator Patterson, this has been an evolving process. There has been an ongoing investigation in place. So over time, the Speaker and I have become more aware of what is happening. As I said to the committee last week, this has started as an investigation quite properly into the payment of an ITR, a code of conduct. That is not my business, but if there are issues around what has happened as part of the investigation that go to matters that relate to parliamentarians or to the issue of privilege, that is my business. So to suggest that I would not have had the full picture in August, but I have been concerned from day one and I've acted.
When would you say you felt you have had the full picture? Do you think you have the full picture now?
Yes, I think I've had the full picture for a number of weeks.
Right, but you didn't take this action a number of weeks ago?
Because I have been, as I said, I have had confidence in Ms Hinchcliffe and Ms Hinder, but the Speaker and I have been talking about this and we believe the data is best held in the Parliament under the supervision of the clerks, because that is what parliamentarians expect.
Thank you. Ms Hinchcliffe, you said before in response to questions from Senator Hume that you considered the parliamentary privilege risk.
Yes, Senator.
Did you seek advice on the parliamentary privilege risk?
No, I didn't, Senator.
Really?
Yeah, that's right, Senator. I considered, I went back to first principles and thought through the issues of ensuring that parliamentary privileged material, or material that even broader than that, that belonged to a parliamentarian, did not go to the investigator in this matter. And I worked through the controls that we had in place. But I concede, given the concerns that have been raised in this committee, that it would have been beneficial for me to have sought advice from the clerk, which I did not do.
Why didn't you?
Senator, for exactly the reason that I just discussed, I went through the first principles process and was assured in my mind that there were adequate controls of the confidentiality of parliamentary data, and that no parliamentary privileged information would go to the investigator. But as I said, I can see from the conversations that we've had in this committee that it would have provided a much greater assurance to senators if I had sought that advice.
Sure. And Ms Hinchcliffe, you're an accomplished and senior public servant, but none of us are experts in everything, and you have the great benefit of heading a department that has not too far from it people who are experts in parliamentary privilege. Did you really prefer your own judgment over the clerk's judgment about the risk of parliamentary privilege?
Senator, I conceded that I didn't seek the advice of the clerks, and that it would have been better placed if I had.
I think what we can say, Senator Patterson, I'm trying to be transparent, but bearing in mind there's a NAC overlay, is that what initially started as one investigation has led to obviously a broader investigation. I think you can surmise that. So at this point, I think you can say, well, with the value of hindsight, why didn't you do X, Y and Z? But because this has been an evolving piece, that one investigation then led to questions about other things that were happening, it's not been a linear process about one particular aspect. It is a process which has gone off onto another shoots as we've gone along. So
I appreciate that,
it is not a linear process where the Secretary could have went, yes, it should have happened.
But, President, you know as well as anyone in this room, probably better, the long history of privilege issues between the Parliament and DPS. This is a well-litigated, controversial area. I would have thought anyone, upon being appointed Secretary of the DPS, would familiarise themselves with that history, or even applying for the job or going through an interview with that job, would appreciate that. And if the Secretary of DPS is not sensitive to concerns about parliamentary privilege, we've got a whole range of other problems, don't we?
Well, I don't accept the characterisation Ms Hinchcliffe has answered your questions. The other thing I just want to go back to, Ms Hinchcliffe said in her opening statement, I think last week, that you asked me about the investigation by the journalist Andrew Probin, and Ms Hinchcliffe said there were a number of inaccuracies in that, in the questions that were put to DPS. So I just add that to my response to your questions.
But it's only thanks to Mr Probin that we know about this. As a parliamentarian, I was completely in the dark about this until I saw his report and read about it. And I do want to ask about that now. Ms Hinchcliffe, did you ever consider informing parliamentarians that their privilege might have been breached?
Senator, in relation to the informing parliamentarians that DPS employee data had been extracted from the ICT system and provided to TransPerfect in order to be able to do searches, I would say that is how I have thought about this process. This is DPS employee data that has been extracted from the ICT systems and provided to TransPerfect for searches to be conducted to be able to determine DPS's part in a payment of an ITR payment where serious concerns were raised with me about whether DPS had done the right things. So I put that context in it in terms of that's the way I have been thinking about this investigation and about the extraction of the data.
Sure. But didn't you say that in the first search that was conducted by DPS employees that it was of the entire APH network, not just the relevant DPS employees?
And Senator, I wasn't aware of that at the time that the searches were being undertaken. But yes, that's right.
When did you become aware of it?
Senator, I'll have to take that on notice. There was further investigation that DPS has undertaken to be able to determine what had actually happened with the DPS searches because of the concerns that were raised by Dr Ruffley about the amount of or the lack of information that was provided.
Thanks, Chair. But isn't it the case that it's highly possible, if not likely, that privilege was breached in that first search by DPS employees, given it canvassed the entire APH network?
As I said, I'm very concerned about the fact that those searches were conducted across the whole of the APH.
So when did you plan to tell parliamentarians that our privilege might have been breached in that instance?
Senator, as I've indicated, we've gone through a process now of a number of internal investigations in relation to these matters, and I note that I hadn't provided that information to parliamentarians, and I'll reflect on that.
Can I just ask the final question, Chair, then please rotate the call. If this happened again, if you came across a DPS search or an external search or whoever that potentially breached the privilege of parliamentarians, would you handle it differently by, as a bare minimum, disclosing to the Parliament that this might have happened?
I would go and seek advice from the clerk, and I'd also talk to the President and work through the process to be able to do that. Yes, Senator.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.